Okay, nice. Hello, Rakhi ma'am. You are just starting as a teacher. That's nice to know. Okay, welcome everyone for our next meeting and discussion. First of all, I hope everyone is doing as well as possible in the current situation. And I wish all of you and everyone in your family good health. Let's begin. As we had already spread in the WhatsApp groups and all, that today we'll be discussing something about the science of learning. So we all use learning in quite often, but today we'll try to see what does the science of learning inform us, and if we can use some of these learnings to look at our classroom lessons in a different way and so. Okay, so as I said, we use learning quite often, right? So in the chat box or by unmuting, uh, can we all start sharing what we all think of learning, how we define learning? So, and we'll keep asking this question today multiple times. There are some stories, some anecdotes, and after every such sharing, we'll try to think if we are on the same page about how we define learning, right? So let's start. I think some people have started typing. Okay, yeah. Hello, Shanti ma'am. Yeah. So what we are asking is, can we all start by thinking and sharing about how we define learning? It might not have like a specific definition. It could be just a string of words that come to your mind when we say learning. Okay. Yes.
Mrinal, should we write or should we
I
say?
think let's take a minute to write first so that everyone gets good time to think. Yeah. So acquiring knowledge and skills. Yeah, one way to look at this question would be what would be the evidence to call that someone has learned? Say you're talking to people, and then when will you say that this person has learned something? Or when you are learning something, when will you say that I have learned something? So okay, so Ashwin says knowing something that you didn't know before, getting better at something. Tarun says competency building, it could be knowledge, skill, attitude. Right. Let's wait for some more time. During the session, it would also be nice to recollect if you have some recent evidences or recent examples of your own learning. Did you learn something recently? Was it a skill or even a recipe or I don't know, to ride a bike or a car or something? So, what was the latest experience of you learning something? And maybe towards the end, we can share with respect to the science of learning our experience, right? So, yeah. Um, Learning is a continuous process, and applying knowledge to daily life is learning. Learning is making new connections between things. So yeah, as we all see, everyone is saying something different. It's all seems connected, but everyone is bringing in a different aspect. That's already interesting, right? So nice. By answering questions, okay, by answering questions is a way to find out if someone has learned or not. I guess that's what Anuradha ma'am is saying. Right. Okay, Shanti ma'am is saying she started learning some Sanskrit. Yeah. So now that a lot of people have shared on chat box, is there someone who wants to speak up, who wants to bring in something which has not been discussed so far? Okay, Tarun is also saying questioning and changing our belief system could also be learning. Okay, so any change would be learning, I guess. Right. Nice. So now that we have so many things brought in on the table, let's look at some instances. Uh, so here's a story. I maybe a lot of you might already know the story. It's called "Fish is a Fish" by Leo Leone. It's a story popularly used in education circles, so maybe some people might have read it. we'll try to look at it in a new angle. The story goes this way. So there was a fish and a frog who were living in water, and they became friends. And fish was saying that I've never left water before. I don't know how the world outside looks like. And the frog gets excited and wants to tell the fish everything possible about the world. And the frog starts describing all fantastic creatures, like there are animals. He started describing bulls by by telling the fish that there are animals which have horns, which have black spots on them. There are animals who can walk on 2 feet, and they can be really huge compared to what we see here. So this is what the frog told about the world that the frog had seen to the fish, right? So now fish was definitely excited, and fish was learning new things because so many things which fish had not seen or thought before were being introduced to the fish, right? So then frog asked the fish, so what do you know about the world? And this is what the fish started drawing, right? So these are the kind of images that the fish had came to fish's mind. So basically, when the frog was talking about birds, the fish imagined a fish with some wings on it and something that could fly in a water-like environment. Again, for bulls, as you can see. So yeah, instead of me describing, why not just look at the pictures, enjoy it for a moment, and see what all was the fish's imagination. So yeah, when the fish was asked about characteristics of what birds look like, the fish started describing about an animal which had wings and which could fly. When the fish was asked about bull, the fish described something with spots and horns. So yes, when we look at some form of question and answers, the fish did describe some characteristics. The question that I would like to ask everyone is, do you think this exhibits learning? Do you think the fish had learned? Okay, Vivek says yes. Okay, I think I'll call everyone by their first name. I hope everyone is okay. It just brings better space to discuss things. Right? Okay, Shanti says no. Vivek says yes. So we have two contradictions. That's good. Vivek, would you like to unmute and share? Okay, Ashwin also says yes, fish did learn something new. It had a partial and improper understanding, though not its fault. Yeah, let's not think about what was fish's fault or what was frog's fault at this point. Let's just first understand if there was learning. So yeah, there are people who are saying there were learning has happened, and there are people who are saying learning has not happened. So let's again look at our earlier definitions of learning. Some people had said different things. Maybe you can also go back and look at the chat box. So yeah, Vivek, would you like to unmute and share, or even Ashwin, and maybe then Shanti can share, because there is contradiction. Let's also wait for others to reply. Let's look at the second question after some time. The second question is, do we agree with the frog's approach of teaching? We'll come to that later, but first let's understand if there was learning on. So what Ashwin is saying is fish did learn something, but the understanding was not proper. So are you saying that learning and understanding are two different things? Is my question to you, Ashwin. Gauri says partly yes, to the extent that fish got to know new things, but is his learning complete? No. Is his learning a good representation Representation of world? No. Okay, so what maybe some of us are saying that there is partial learning, right? Because there are some new things which are learned, we can still call it learning, but it's not complete learning. Okay, so is there something that someone wants to add? Yes, Shanti.
So, as it said, it is partial learning because we are not, it is an imagination that is there in your head based on your learning, but it is not directly connecting to the reality of the world. So, what is exactly is there, we are unable to connect with these both. So, if you look at the pictures, the fish is imagining the bird also as a fish, which is the shape of a fish with wings, right?
Right.
And yeah, the bull also. So, that means you are actually not exposing, giving the complete knowledge. It's only to certain extent whatever you have, you are imagining or applying that. So wherein, so it is partial, but
Oh.
it is not related much to the, I mean, it's little far away from the reality. That's the only
Okay.
thing.
Sure.
There is
So it
still learning.
doesn't reflect reality. That's why it's partial learning.
Yeah.
Let's also keep thinking about what is learning throughout the session, and then maybe we'll revisit what is learning towards the end. So now we are at the stage where we are calling that whatever new things is learned, whenever there's new thing learned, at least some learning happens is what we have concluded. Okay, so Tarun is talking about schemas. Maybe Tarun is saying that it might not be a correct schema. New schema has been formed, which doesn't match with the reality. Okay, so fine. Deepali says that the process of learning has begun. Okay, so it is not completed. The process of learning has begun. Okay, so now let's come at the second question. Do you agree with the frog's approach? Say if you had to teach the fish, what approach would you have used? Say I want to tell someone about the world that the person has never witnessed. What would be your approach? We have a storyteller here, Ashwin. So, yeah.
Pranal, I had a connectivity issue. Can you just give me a gist of what you said the story was?
Sure, sure. So, yeah, quickly. So, the story is about a fish and a frog who live in water. And the frog has been to the land, and frog is trying to teach the fish about the world out there. And he tells the fish about bulls and birds who can fly and humans who can walk and so on. This is what the fish imagines in its own head. So we are and so when you ask the fish, what have you seen or learned? This is what the fish tells, that there are animals who can fly with wings, and there are animals who can walk on two legs and so on. But when you ask the fish to draw, this is what the fish draws. So we are thinking if learning has happened in this situation, and now that we have discussed this for a while, we are thinking, do you agree with the frog's approach of teaching? Say you were the one telling the fish about the world out there, what would be your approach?
I do feel that, see, the frog is transferring knowledge, right?
Okay.
But the thing is, it is not actually, again, questioning again what it has been translating. Is that understood rightly by the fish or not?
Okay.
So that is where the questioning part, see, I say yes or I say no. So then if you ask again, what did I say? So yes or no. So you get the answer. Based on that, probably you can transfer the knowledge again. So that's why, so the frog has an opportunity to go out of the water, see the world, and come back and convey that to the fish. So it is happening. But the thing is, it has to confirm whatever it is saying, is that exactly the fish is understanding or not.
Okay, sure. So what I think Shanti is saying is maybe give some opportunity to assess by questioning and seeing, like checking if you have understood or not. But let's also think that we have not defined understanding yet. We don't know what we mean when we say understand. Yeah, so sure. Tarun is saying that maybe we should take the fish out of the water and show the world, let the fish experience the world by itself. That might be or might not be possible, but that's one way. So, in fact, if you read the story further, that's what the frog does. Frog takes the fish, and frog being an amphibian can help the fish live out on the land for a while at least. And so basically, the frog supports the fish outside on the land, and that's what happens, right? Then they come back to the water. So, Tarun, you are saying this is one way to teach someone. That's one approach. Pankaj is saying due to lack of information, there was a high level of imagination. Okay, so Pankaj is saying it's the problem with the way information was presented, or okay, yeah, definitely. It was a wonderful self imagination, which we are all aware of, right? When we are left to ourselves, this is what we imagine. Right. Okay, so any other approaches? So we have two approaches. Say you were the one teaching fish. What would be your approach? One was by questioning someone. One was by taking the fish out of water, which is also interesting. But as we all know, it might not be possible always. Say I have to tell the fish about space and moon and so on, and I might not be able to take the fish everywhere.
So, Mrina, I think that this is actually quite an interesting first step in this particular case, where see if the fish or say if the fish is shown everything, then you actually just I don't know, probably just like kill that curiosity entirely. Whereas just half information given, but there was a lot of scope. So if the frog asked the fish to draw how does it imagine, then that was a nice way of making the fish learn.
Okay.
So and then go to the next step.
Okay.
So in that way, it becomes a very nice intermediate step.
Got it. So Pankaj is actually agreeing with the frog's approach, assuming that he's saying that this is the drawing that the frog asked the fish to draw, and then it took the fish to the next level. So yeah, we don't know that. Let's assume for this discussion that it is not the frog who had asked to draw. It was just someone else who asked the fish to draw. Yeah. So, but yeah, I got your point. So Pankaj is saying that this, if it was frog who asked the fish to draw, it was a wonderful place to understand where the fish is and to understand the world of fish, its imagination, and so on. Do you all agree with Pankaj?
Right.
Any other thoughts?
So at this point, it's like the fish has understood the new facts that the frog has presented through the world it has experienced. So now that is like a starting point. Now the fish can give other descriptions.
Right.
So the fish has described about the wings. It hasn't described about the beak or the shape or skin
Right.
and so on. So once the frog discusses all those properties, the fish will have a better understanding.
Right. Okay. So Ashwin is saying you need not even draw. Just by asking a few more questions about what you have understood might help you understand, might help the frog understand where the fish is, right? So similar to what Shanti said. Tarun says it depends on what the objective was. If objective is to get the right answer and if time is limited, then maybe not correct. But if that is not the objective, frog's approach is fine, or even frog can ask some questions to construct schema. Yeah, this is all assuming that the frog wants to take this further. So I think Tarun and Pankaj are saying more or less the same thing. Let's see what we have next. Yeah, so there's another example. Okay, we'll come to this one a little later. So there's another story. So there's a 6-year-old watching a movie, Pink Panther, with her father. Have you all seen this movie? This is a funny detective kind of movie. And after a few months, when the daughter and father are trying to work out something, the daughter reminds the father, "Do you remember how Steve Martin's finger got stuck in the door?" And that's what Steve Martin did. And the father is an educator, and he gets surprised that, if you look at exercise of watching a movie, it's actually a passive experience, right? You are just sitting there, there's something playing in front of you, and you're just absorbing. And after the movie, there's no like post-assessment, there's no pre-assessment, there's no think, pair, share, nothing what educators find essential for learning to happen. Nothing of that sort happens when you watch a movie. But still, after 6 months, this kid, when is trying to apply something similar to her real life, she remembers what she had seen in the movie. So, yeah, do you think in this case, learning has happened? I'm sure all of us have experienced this, right? Movie watching, and there are movies and books which stay with us for years together. But if you look at the experience of watching a movie, I would call it a passive experience. There's no active learning happening. No one is trying to make us do things hands-on and anything. Okay. Ashwin, Anuradha are saying learning has happened. Okay, so Shanti is saying learning happens, but the application might not be immediate. What does that mean? I didn't get Shanti. Yes, there would be learning if there is any change in our schema, behavior, belief, value. Okay, so Tarun is saying, okay, bottom line is if any of these things changes, then learning has happened. But then my question is that we all know that passive learning is not really the way to go. This really goes against what we would think about a good learning environment, right? This is just like someone giving a lecture, but maybe a active, funny kind of lecture. In my mind, at least, if someone wants to contradict, you're free to contradict. But even in that case, learning seems to have happened. Okay, so Vijit says that learning happens if the child is encouraged or interested or something has grabbed the child's attention. Atharna also says it has to be interesting and not boring. Yes, in many classes, learning happens, but it's partial. Okay, yeah. So Raki is saying that based on this, I think what Raki is saying is that based on this evidence, we don't know if complete learning has happened, but maybe some learning, partial learning has happened. Okay. Yeah, Vivek says that maybe a movie on the life of Srinivas Ramanujan can be inspirational to a math student. So it depends on what movie you're watching. Maybe someone else who is not interested in math might not remember what happened in the movie of Ramanujan. Okay, so yeah, many interesting things are emerging here, right? So grabbing attention seems to be a common theme here. So in the first case, it was understanding, questioning, and understanding what the child or what the learner has gone through or what the learner has really understood, and then using it to develop further schema came out, I think, in the first situation. The second situation, we are talking about grabbing attention. So something where the child's, this movie is something where every child can relate to, something which is very relevant and funny and engaging, a well-made movie maybe. So, okay, so yeah, Deepali says learning can also be in the form of experiences which might create connections ahead. So it might not create connections in the present moment, but in future it might create some connections. Okay, so yeah, so Aparajita is saying, I believe learning is happening because child is applied in a different situation. What the child learned in one situation was applied in a different situation. This is a new definition of learning, which was not discussed earlier, I think. So transfer of knowledge in an new unrelated environment. When that happens, you can say learning has happened. This is a new thing, a new property of learning that has come up. Right, interesting. So let's move on to another case. Right, so there was a psychologist who wanted to study learning and learning of momentum. So what he did was he took physics students of undergraduate of a renowned college and compared them with elementary students on their learning on momentum. So they were not really, elementary students weren't really exposed to momentum, but physics, of course, undergrad students were exposed to momentum. What he did was he asked them to play a game, and the game was such that you had to hit a ball or something, such that at impacts it should be at least speed. And before everyone in the study could play the game, he also gave them a real ball and something to play with, to maybe play around and understand how the ball moves when you use force and so on. And interestingly, what do you think would have happened? Who would have performed better, physics students or elementary students? Or yeah, what do you think would have happened?
Can you repeat the question, ma'am? Once again.
Yeah, the question is, so there was this study where physics students and elementary school students were asked to play a game where they had to apply the knowledge of momentum, right? Momentum is this property in physics. So some property in physics they had to apply. Elementary students were, of course, not taught before about momentum. Physics students, undergrad physics students were quite well aware about the concept. And when it came to playing the game, who do you think would have fared well? Undergrads or elementary?
But what was the condition that they have to click they have to hit with least speed?
Yeah, so least speed. So basically, if you have understood the concept better, you would play the game better. That was the idea. My chat box is not opening. If there's someone replying on chat box, maybe can one of you read out the responses?
Nita ma'am is saying elementary students.
Okay. Any other responses? So one person says elementary. Is there anyone who thinks physics?
Yeah, Gauri ma'am is also saying both would have performed same, I think.
Okay.
Both.
Okay, both would have performed well or both would have performed not well? Gauri, what do you think? Okay, so let me break the surprise. Both of them did not perform well. Both of them could not apply the knowledge and eventually play the game. So both of them failed miserably at the game. So again, the same question. Do you think physics students who had learned about momentum, do you think they had learned about momentum? Yeah, would you say that physics students have learned about momentum? And what about elementary students? Yeah, so the question is, would you say that learning happened for physics students whenever they learned about momentum? And yeah, elementary students, would you say elementary students did learn something?
No, understanding of a concept is different from mastering skill.
Can you speak a little louder? I'm not able to hear you. Who is that? I think I heard something about mastery.
Yeah. So understanding the concept doesn't mean that we mastered the skill. Both are different. Understanding a concept is different from a skill, definitely.
Okay, so let's think that we have used understanding twice here. So maybe at some point we'll start thinking about what understanding looks like. Okay, there are a few people who have replied. They learned as a knowledge but didn't conceptualize and didn't know how to apply. Physics students may have been bad performers. Elementary students may have performed to their level of understanding. Okay. Yeah, interesting. I guess we can't really comment about elementary students because we don't have complete knowledge about. Yeah, they might have performed some other elements, not momentum, but with respect to some other things. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, physics students would have understood better than elementary students, is what Rakhi is saying. Right. But as kids, they would have passed in the exams and they're all with good grades. They come from a very good undergrad college. So it means that, yeah, they're good, smart students. So whenever they would have learned about momentum, they would have learned it. One is applying, other one is assimilating and applying. Okay, so what everyone is saying that physics students are not good at, undergrad students couldn't apply the knowledge. So, but no one has spoken about if they learnt or not. So yeah, the thing that I'm coming back at is now, are we redefining learning in some way? So if physics students are not able to apply something that they learned in their whatever learning days, school days, would you say that they learned or not? Okay. Yeah, Anuradha is saying something interesting. No evidence to suggest either ways. And Anuradha, would you like to unmute and elaborate a bit?
Sorry, are you able to hear me?
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So while you suggested that they were not able to apply what was being asked of them, while not being able to apply is just evidence of that. They are just not able to apply, but there is no, there's no other information that kind of tells us whether they have even learned what momentum is. So
Right.
that's where I was getting at.
Okay, yeah. So I'll just add to what you said. So when they were asked, the same students, when they were asked to give a written exam, they all fared well. So
does that include the elementary as well?
Yeah. So no, elementary did not fare well. Just the physics students, when there was a one-on-one dialogue with physics students, they said you asked us to give a written test and let's see what happens. And in written test, they all could write. They fared well in a written test on momentum.
Okay, then in that case, I would say that physics students, yes, there is learning that has happened. Even if it is only recall of knowledge about what momentum is, there is definitely learning that's happened.
Okay, so you would say that recall is also learning. It doesn't it doesn't complete learning. It is still some partial learning, is what you're saying.
Learning just about something, right? Like, for example, I now learned your name is Mrinal. I know this. I've associated your face with that name. That's learning. So
Okay.
associating a concept with the theoretical part of it, I would still call it learning.
Right.
Yeah, there are different levels, I would say, but I would still not call this partial learning.
Sure. So you're saying that anything new, it could be skill, it could be just a fact, it is still learning. Yes. Great. Yeah, let's think, keep thinking. So, right. So let's look back at a fish story. And as I think some of us talked about, understanding where the fish was or what the fish had understood and then building on it, right? So the schema theory of learning, which Piaget has also spoken about. So one of the three principles of learning, which we can sort of look back and try to understand. One reason that the fish could not really understand the world that the frog had seen, or the way frog was trying to describe, was that the frog did not consider what was fish's understanding of the world before, right? So there was no understanding there was no place where the frog tried to elicit some prior understanding of the fish and then tried to let the fish. So if you look at all the drawings, it was all in water, right? So there were birds flying, but they were all, fishes like birds were flying, but they were flying in water. there was this cow, there was this man who was walking in 2 feet, but he was still in water. So the world still looked like the fish's world. It was just some additional modifications to whatever new things that the fish had heard, right? So if instead, if it was a conceptual understanding that the frog had tried to do about maybe adaptations, about how there are different environments in this world, and different environments could mean different kind of modifications, adaptations, and so on, that could have brought in a better understanding of the world. So one learning that this brings on, or this tells us about learning, is students come to classroom or anywhere with a lot of preconceptions about how the world works. This is just natural because right from infants, so it was interesting for me to read that infants as young as 3 or 4 months old have this understanding that something has to be sitting on a solid ground. If you try to play some illusion where a box is just hanging and a box is sitting on a hard surface, the infant seems to be confused by a hanging box. So just the idea that something has to stand or sit on something, this kind of understanding itself happens as early as 2-3 months. So we are trying to constantly understand the world around us, subconsciously, unconsciously, and so on. And this brings in preconceptions about the world. Now, when we try to go in some formal learning environment, or even when informal dialogues with adults, these kind of stand in way, and then they exhibit things like, fishes with wings and so on. So if we try to bring in first the preconceptions and then try to build on it, might be a better way to go. Like Pankaj said, if the drawing of what the fish had understood, if that was the intermediate step, and then the frog was trying to do something later, that would be an interesting way to teach, right? Okay, so this is the first principle of learning. The second one, which also comes about, okay, let's talk about the second one. So a lot of us talked about understanding, right? So if there might be learning, but maybe not understanding, and we used words like this. So can we think about what we mean when we say we understand something? Sorry, Tarun, I didn't see your message. What were you trying to say? In what is the context here? I'm missing it.
For principle of learning?
Yeah. Are we assessing a different aspect of learning by this task?
Okay. Yeah, I was just saying that probably when someone was teaching, let's say the frog was teaching or this momentum example, when the teacher taught about momentum, they might have taught just for the recall, right? They might not have taught for the application. So these are two different aspects, recalling and application. So it might be taught something in keeping in mind for learning, and if you are assessing some different aspect of learning, then that is not correct.
Right. Yeah. So but if the curriculum is made by, say, curriculum writers, then we have to understand or question what they define as learning, right? So, yeah. If their understanding of learning is retrieval of knowledge, like someone said, then maybe this is correct. But we have to first understand what is the definition of learning for policymakers, say, or curriculum writers and so on.
So, Mrinal, I see that these are all different levels. I mean, we talk about these different levels of learning in all these different taxonomies. So, like, say, knowing something, that is also learning. I know, like somebody just mentioned, I know that you are.
I'm not saying that.
Maybe slightly like to know how, why, maybe, but application again. So, if we can just deconstruct these learning, because learning is, I guess, happening all the time. Like, it may be consciously, it may just be happening in the background all the time. I'm just sitting idle doing nothing, but I'm sure that there are some connections, new connections being formed in the brain all the time at any given time, even in the sleep maybe.
Right. So I get what you're saying, that learning could have different levels. So even like I think someone said that knowing my name could also be learning. So what I'm trying to say is, as long as we are aware of there are different aspects of learning, we are good. And then as Tarun said, then if we are aware of there are different aspects of learning, and what is the aspect that we want to bring in, then I think that's a good place to be, right? So if we all have different definitions of learning that we have already understood, and as we are going further in the discussion, new and new aspects of learning are coming out. So for example, someone recently talked about transfer of knowledge to a new environment. So as long as we know that what learning should look like for us, that would help as any educator or parent or anyone who is interacting with some form of learning.
Right. Even over here, there are two things I see. One is like, we as facilitators, we want the learners to learn something. Whereas there are some things which the learners may be learning, something which doesn't fit in our kind of whatever boundaries we have drawn or whatever goals we have decided for the learners.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, it's also important to understand, or at least make students think about the goals they would like to have and so on. Yeah, I'll come to that in a while. So, but still, I think we agree on the fact that as long as we know what learning should look like, or at least we should know what learning should look like, right? When we are doing anything about learning. Do we agree there?
Yeah, that I agree. Yeah, totally.
Yeah. So right. I have some answers about understanding. So
sorry, Nina, just one point. But at the same time, I mean, I may have some goals for that learning, but at the same time, being open to the learners' way of learning also. So yeah, both the things.
Yeah. Right. So okay, so understanding means awareness or form some concepts, awareness or ability to comprehend something, or practical application and performing applications. Okay, I think this is about something else. Okay, knowing, being aware, ability to comprehend, form some concepts in mind, something like schema, what Tarun talked about. So this is all what we have talked about understanding, right? So, so what would it be that one should do to bring about this change, right? So, for example, the fish had to understand. So, what would the frog what should the frog do so that the fish understands rather than learns facts? So let's take a single aspect of learning, that learning new facts about the world. Instead of that, I want the fish to understand the world. What change should the frog do? So maybe something that will help this thought process would be a question that we have experts and novice, right? So who would you call an expert, and who would you call novice? This is just general question. Say it could be a game of chess, it could be a game of some sport or dance, any activity. Who would you call an expert and who would you call a novice?
Person who has mastered the skill, you call him as expert. He knows the ins and outs of a particular attribute. Novice is totally an inexperienced person. He doesn't know anything, but he's trying to learn.
Okay, he or she, we don't know the gender. So, right. So expert is someone who has a mastery of a subject. So you've added another topic or another word, which is mastery. So can we also think about what mastery of a subject means? And yeah.
Mastery means, I feel, knowing the ins and outs and the intricacies of a particular attribute.
Okay. Vivek says something interesting. Expert is someone who has made all possible mistakes in the field. Is that possible, Vivek? Is that possible? In that way, I think there'll be no expert.
Yeah, we have made a mistake and then we have gained mastery over that attribute. I agree with him.
Okay. Yes, Anuradha, you can speak.
So let's say if we take the example of chess, I would say a novice is someone like me. I know chess is a game that exists. I know it's a board game. And I know about the coins and, just the general attributes of it. That's all. An expert would be someone who has practiced playing chess many times over, has been able to apply the knowledge of chess, how the coins move or how the pawns move, and basically put that into application many times over, and has reached a level of understanding where he or she can teach about chess to someone.
Okay. So that's one aspect that you added, that if someone can teach about chess to someone, then that person is expert or master. Maybe that's just another way of defining expert. Of course, you added other things also, that if you have understood all the concepts of the game, and so we're just adding more and more things and just pointing this out so that we are aware that sometimes we use words and we all of us don't really, we use it in a very English sense, but all of us don't really agree on what it means and so on. So it's sometimes good to just brainstorm and make sure that what we mean when we use these words, right? Okay, so another case or another study. So what they did was they took experts, novice, and chess A player. So basically, someone who's expert, someone who's good at chess, and someone who's a beginner. So three kinds of player, and they displayed a chessboard with some movement on it for some 5 seconds and covered it and asked them to recall how the board looks. As you can see in the graph, the experts or the masters performed very well right at the first trial. They could, place 15 pieces on its correct position. Chess A player who were good players sort of placed around 8 pieces at the first trial, and novices placed 4 pieces in the first trial. 3 of them got better on the further trials, and eventually they all leveled up. So what does this tell you about? So let's think about, why do you think expert worked out well? So this was sort of a memory game, right? So why do you think expert could place more pieces correctly, and why do you think novices couldn't place the pieces correctly in the first time?
It is more of the practice what they did. So they learned it, but they mastered because they practiced it. Vivek said, make as many mistakes as possible and then learn from that.
Right,
So,
but this wasn't a chess game, right? This was just a memory game.
Even then, because you might not be knowing all the coins and the moves, but somebody who knows it, they'll know the technique of remembering it. Okay. Yeah, they have techniques where they can.
So you're saying that because I'm better at playing chess, I somehow have mastered the way of memorizing also.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So this is
I guess more than this master, because that is a necessity of playing this game. Because when you're playing this game, there's a need to know where all these things are, so that you design your strategies accordingly. It cannot be like you are playing only one thing at a time. You keep a track of many things at the same time.
Right. So what both of you are sort of saying that, to be a master, you need to have better memory. And that's why eventually it's just a side effect. Because I'm mastered, I also have better memory at, looking at the pieces and remembering where they stood. Any other thoughts? Someone who disagrees here? So, okay. So I'll tell you another experiment that they did. Same 3 people. They kept the chess pieces now, but they weren't placed in some, they didn't represent any game. They're just randomly placed. And then the board was covered for 5 seconds, displayed for 5 seconds and covered. What do you think would have happened? What do you think would be the result this time? Who do you think would have fared better? Or, yeah.
So you can just repeat.
Yeah. So this in the second trial, or in the second experiment, they placed the pieces just randomly on the chessboard. It didn't represent. So, it wasn't on the white squares or on the black squares or anything. They're just randomly placed on the chessboard. White, black, everything was randomly placed anywhere. They didn't represent any rules or, moves of the game.
It's the same.
Okay, so based on our earlier hypothesis, it should be the same, right? So experts should still perform better. Any other answer?
No, not expert should be performing better. I'm saying same means it should be same.
Oh, 3 of them should be same. But then according to your hypothesis, it should be experts should be better, right?
No, because I'm conditioning to some way of playing. It is not like I'm conditioning to these random things placed anywhere randomly. Generally there is some logic to these placements. It's not like anything placed anywhere when we are playing.
Okay, so because of lack of time, I'll just quickly tell. So yes, they all fared equally badly. So all of them placed some 5 pieces or 4 pieces correctly, and they got a little better over time. So what does this tell us about the way one becomes an expert, or about the way things work in our brain?
I guess this is more to do with conditioning, where you see some of these patterns day in, day out, and then so you are used to that thing. So when you change the order, you are not used to that pattern. It's not about the which thing stands where. It's about some pattern that you are used to.
So I think what you're trying to say is the way our brain doesn't work like a memory or things working independently. But in case of experts, you start to find patterns better. You start to organize things better in our mind, organize concepts. And someone talked about forming connections. So you sort of form better connections with what you knew and what new thing has been presented in context to what I already knew, and so on. So because of all these things, someone becomes an expert. Of course, there could be other things. There will be other things. But one of the way that someone becomes an expert, so one learns better in any task, is when you learn to organize things, learn to make connections, not just with respect to a new task, but also how that connects to what I already knew in my world, or what different things that I know, and form better organized structures in brain. So this kind of situation brings about better understanding. So the second principle of learning is when someone learns better, when we not only know better facts, they not only have a deep factual knowledge, but we also understand this facts in some context, and it is organized in a way so that I can facilitate retrieval better whenever I have to apply it. So say it's a new chess game, or I don't know, new challenge thrown in front of me. I know how to retrieve that knowledge, and that is happening because it's organized in such a way that retrieval has been possible. So this kind of organization is brought about when learning has happened for understanding. So why would someone have better learning for understanding? Why would someone not have a better learning for understanding, right? So I think this is where, so the literature or science and learning says is a lot of these things, these ways of forming understanding and so on, are formed in our early days when we have started defining how learning looks like. So I think comes much later. But yeah, so how children learn is by understanding what learning means to me. So right when I have started learning something formally or informally, what learning means and what is my role in that learning. Am I supposed to just remember information and put it out when someone asked me, or is my role something different than that? So this kind of early understanding or early setting of goal and setting my place in the in the whole scheme of learning really defines how understanding and the high level of learning could look like, right? Okay, so we've talked a lot about how fish or how frog was as an educator. Let's think, was fish a good student, right? I think Ashwin in the very beginning said that, fish wasn't a fish's mistake at all. I want all of you to think if you all agree with it. Do you think fish was a good learner? Say if fish was a student in your class, would you be happy with fish as a student? Any thoughts? So everyone thinks that fish was a good learner, or was there some role that fish could have played? So good and bad are sort of, let's not use adjectives here. Let's just say, could fish learn this in a different way? Could fish have participated in the process of learning in a different way? Is there anyone typing in the chat box? I'm not able to open the chat box.
Oh, there's a lot of discussion happening in the chat box.
Oh, okay. Okay, sorry. Now I can open. Okay, so okay. Some people are saying yes. Some people are saying maybe the fish could have asked some questions like, why am I learning this? Okay, not sure if the fish even knew it could question. Should have given an example and could have asked if my understanding is correct. Okay, yeah. So there are two things. One is, yes, fish could have done something by maybe asking a question somewhere. But there's also a point brought out by Pankaj is, did the fish even know that it could ask? Or it could play a role in this whole process, or it had a role to play in this whole process. That itself is a very important point to think about. But yeah, so it definitely was a passive learner, right? So it did not put new learning in the context of the old learning, and it lacked this awareness of need to ask how new knowledge fits with what I already knew and so on. So there were two things. Was there an environment that the fish could know that it could ask such questions? Which is the point, a very relevant point brought out by Pankaj, which will come to soon. But also, the learner itself wasn't aware that, I the new knowledge that I'm thrown at, where does it fit in my schema of things? So this is what we call it as metacognition, right? So it was sort of low on metacognition. It didn't think about what was happening in the whole process of learning, right? I think I'm missing out on chat. Can someone quickly tell me if there is some new thing that has come up on chat?
Vijit says that fish could have better learner if the condition for learning was right and appropriate for its background knowledge.
Right. So the fish was a passive learner. Definitely, there was a role of environment. The frog should have created an environment, or not just frog, but just in general, there could have been environment. Frog could be just one part of that environment, where the fish knew that, I have to ask questions, and so this knowing that whatever new thing that I'm looking at, or new information that is around me, to try to think, how does it fit with what I already know? Does it match with it? Does it not match with it? What are the further questions that are coming to our mind with respect to this? And these questions could have guided further learning. So metacognition, this is the third principle of learning, that metacognition plays a huge role in especially the understanding part. So just knowing new knowledge might not help, where metacognition might not play a role there, but everything after that, understanding, retrieval, organization of knowledge in my brain, everything else has, so metacognition has a huge role to play. And this is where educators could, leverage this, which has been wonderfully done in one of the experiments, which I'll talk about. So, and this also enhances in transfer of knowledge, which we talked about. So using the knowledge that I just learned. So here, if the knowledge was about different kind of adaptations in bird, say if the fish happened to know that, I don't know, there was some different kind of environment, could it predict what kind of animals lived in that environment? So that is where the application of knowledge would have come, or transfer of knowledge would have come. So transfer just doesn't mean application, but transfer also means, transfer is again one of the most important part of learning, using the knowledge that I used in one situation in some other situation. It need not be a completely unrelated situation, but a different situation, right? So, and one of the ways that it is done is through metacognition, or one of the ways that really helps is through metacognition. And there are different ways educators have used it. One English teacher, this is a research paper written by an English teacher about procedural facilitation, in which the teacher asked students, they gave students some prompts, and they were supposed to write essay on it, but it wasn't just the activity of giving a prompt and writing an essay. The students were given an outline to think and share what went through in their mind in the whole process. And this was a small group activity, and then they shared their learnings in the whole class and so on. So the questions like, what are my goals when I'm writing this essay? So when we say goals, sometimes we think of goals as very big picture things, but goals could also be a very small picture thing limited to this particular activity, right? So my goal could be writing an essay about butterflies and trees and something, I don't know. And once, like, Pankaj spoke about goal of students and goal of teachers, but as soon as the student puts in some goal, the ownership or environment of learning is completely driven by the student. So, right. So, and then once the goal is decided, the students were supposed to share how they use the prompt, what happened when they read the prompt, what kind of mental models they used to take the prompt and, take in different directions and so on. And everyone's process was different. They shared their process with each other and so on. This is another problem, which another story or another paper which talks about a mathematician. You all, I don't know, mathematics teachers would definitely be aware of Polia's book, How to Solve It. I've heard it's a very nice book. And there are 3 steps of solving a problem that Polia prescribes. It starts with understanding a problem first, and that itself is a very deep process. Then devising a plan to work out the problem, and then looking back. So a lot of problem solvers end at devising a plan and solving it, and do not really go at looking back, where looking back looks like, why is this solution working in this case? Can the solution also work in some other case? Can I use some other way to use it, and so on? So what they did was they gave some journals to all students whenever they were solving problems, and the journal had a pre-written list of questions. The questions were about problem comprehension, like what is the problem about, or what is the question trying to ask. Then they were questions about such that they would connect to previous tasks, like how do you think this problem is different from what you've already solved before? What kind of strategies you can work out? And then reflection, where does this solution make sense? What difficulties do you have, and so on, right? So this kind of metacognitive thinking, or guiding students through this metacognitive process, makes them better problem solvers, makes them better learners. This was the third tenet of learning. I think I've spoken a lot. So I'll end with this brainstorming anything. But before that, I would say that what I spoke mostly from, so National Research Council have come up with a very succinct report about how people learn. It's a huge book, and there have been decades of research about learning, and it's a very well succinctly written report about how learning happens and different aspects of learning. And there are, of course, other references which I'll talk about. But if you get a chance, I think you should at least read the summary of this report. It's a very well-written report. So yeah, let's talk about what we discussed about learning, and how lessons, what we discussed about learning, how does that tell, or what does that inform us about the environment that would enable learning? So can we share? So I think Pankaj alluded to this a while back. So let's think of, we have talked about different aspects of learning, and then three tenets of learning. One was eliciting prior understanding, second was organizing information, and third was the metacognitive process, taking students through a metacognitive process. So looking at these aspects of learning, what kind of environment do you think would bring out learning the most? Yes, any thoughts? Safe environment, a modeling environment, giving opportunity, a joyful environment where children are allowed to participate, non-judgmental space, good relationship. Yeah, so I think real life connect. Right. So basically, there are three aspects here. One is learner-centered, which talks about, this where the learner is at the starting point, and so different learners have different ways of learning, so multiple intelligences and so on. So learner-centered environment, knowledge-centered environment. Knowledge-centered environment would be knowledge environment which gives focus on the process of building knowledge, which also means this metacognitive approach towards learning and so on. And assessment centered, where you are not just asking students to do tasks, but providing a constant feedback here. And this is all in the context of a community where everyone is learning together, right? So Right. Before we end, I would like to tell some interesting things that happen in our brain. So, what does neuroscience tell us about learning? So, learning definitely changes wiring in our brain. There are new synapses formed, more blood circulation, and so on. And experiences positively changes the functional organization of brain. So, if better learning is associated with certain type of functional organization, and this kind of organization is elicited by experiences. So when we say experiences, it just doesn't mean hands-on kind of experiences. Informational experiences like finding inferences, finding patterns, categorizing, where I'm going through mental exercises, mental experiences. These kind of informational experiences also brings about changes in functional organization of brain. And something very interesting, so all these a lot of these neuroscience experiments have been done with rats and cats and mouse and a lot of other animal models, and things like rats which were in the sewers, so environment that modeled sewer environment, versus rat that were bred in a lab kind of environment. When these two rats were in future given some challenges or some new learning experience, the rats which were in rich experiential environment, which was close to its real world environment, that was a sewer, performed better than the lab bred rats. Yeah, there were also similar in studies where mice, when they were given some maze-like structures which they had to learn and so on, versus just walking around kind of exercises where you had to walk on treadmill, had different effects on brain. In case of exercising, where you just had to do tasks repeatedly, there was higher blood circulation. But when there was learning, there were along with higher blood circulation, there was also new synapses being formed. So all these things sort of informs us a lot about, say, how revision should look like and so on. Right? So, right. I think that's all from my side. I would stop sharing and open the floor for anyone who wants to share other things. So in the beginning, I spoke about if you went through a learning experience recently, would you like to share it? And would you like to look back at that experience from this discussion and so on? So yeah, the floor is open for any question, discussion, any other thoughts. Yeah, Tarun, I didn't mean multiple intelligence in that sense, but what I meant was there's different cultural contexts for each student and different. So every student, when they are not student, but every person, right from when they are born, is exposed to different kind of experiences, and right when they are born, also they have some preferential kind of domain. So all these things make all of us different kind of learners, right? So that is what I meant when I was talking about different learners. And so.
Yeah, I agree.
Yes, there are many books. Yes, I didn't share my last slide. So what question did you ask in school today by Kamala Mukunda is a wonderful book because it's a short book but summarizes a lot of things very nicely. There's another book by John Holt. A lot of things that John Holt talks about. John Holt called How We Learn. And John Holt's book is a lot what we call observation generalization. So it's a lot of observational studies that he has done and what few others have done, and the kind of conclusions that came from those observational studies. So yeah, there are.
Talking about John Holt, do you have a soft copy of Why Teachers Fail? I think Why Teachers Fail or Why Children Fail? I think it's Why.
Yeah, I don't have a soft copy. I mean, I have my own Kindle copy, but I don't have a shareable copy.
Hello?
Yeah, am I audible?
Yeah, now.
Yeah, I don't have a shareable copy, Sridhar.
Oh, okay. Because that book is wonderful. Many of my teachers had told that it's really a wonderful book to read.
Yeah. So yeah, there's another shorter version of how we learn, which is the earlier report that I talked about, done by NRC. It's called How Students Learn. It's written from a very educator's perspective. It's a short book. And it also talks about how different educators in different fields, like what does this mean in science, what does this mean for science education, what does this mean for math education, history education, and so on. So that's also a very nice book. How and it's all freely available online.
Okay, okay. NRC, National Regional Council, NRC.
Let me just share my slide so everyone can see the references. So how people learn is a NRC report. It's quite big and very detailed. How students learn is short of shortened version, written very centered around educators. Yeah, anybody else? If you have read something about learning and so on, there are a lot of educators who have nice blogs. So the Pink Panther story, actually, I read from a blog which was published in one of the education magazines. Yes, any other experience that you have or even before while teaching, and you realize suddenly that, oh, I did not expect this sort of learning to happen, or something like this?
I feel this is my perspective based as a teacher. It is wherein the way the teacher teaches, that also matters in learning. It is not just the child alone. So how she gives the live examples, how she's able to relate a context to a example wherein the child has really felt it in his daily life. So that also helps in learning. I don't know whether it is out of the topic or.
No, definitely. So, okay. I didn't completely get. You're saying is how your teaching is also going to affect learning.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely. Yes. So something like what we talked about, environment, or yeah, if we are trying to engage the metacognition and so on. Any other points that you were trying, or something in particular that you were saying?
Wherein this experiential learning, hands-on experience, that really helps the child to understand a lot, to gain more learning, to apply. I feel experiential learning is the best form.
Yeah, I also missed this point. So hands-on learning. So this rat or mice example, right? So where they were supposed to run on a treadmill, and there was a group of mice who were supposed to solve some challenges. So everyone was walking equally or exercising equally, but the tasks were different. The tasks they were involved in different. So the mice who were walking on treadmill, there was a higher blood circulation, but synapses weren't very high. Number of synapses formed weren't very high. But where they were doing running as well, but they were also trying to solve some challenge by. So yeah, there was some kind of maze or something. There was higher synapses. So, and then they use this learning to put it on students through fMRI machines and so on. And they realize that just hands-on technique might not give you higher learning. It might give you higher engagement, but higher learning would need some kind of thinking capabilities. So yes, you're right that hands-on would definitely increase engagement, but it's not enough. Yes, Tarun is right. There are a lot more other. So environment. So everything else is part of environment only, right, Tarun? Like parents. So this interesting. So there was a study which was performed on middle income families. This was done in US, and the families through observation studies, they realized that these kind of families ask a lot of questions to their children. Questions like, do you want a teddy bear now? Or do you want to have lunch now? What do you want to have for breakfast, and so on. And so what they termed these kind of questions was, they called them pseudo questions, where the child knew that the adult knew the answers for. So there was always this implicit understanding for the child that the adult knows the answer. I'm just supposed to, confirm the answer. And when these kind of kids were put in school and kind of observed for a longer time, this they sort of, even in school, try to model the same kind of behavior, where they look for they try to give this right answer and so on. Yeah, so the environment at home also plays a big role. So that way, not just environment just doesn't mean the classroom environment, it means environment in general.
So we can tell it as a holistic learning then.
Yeah.
Holistic environment for holistic learning.
Yeah. So every interaction that the child has is part of that environment. It could be interaction anywhere, I think.
So Mrinal, I mean, we can discuss sometime later also, but so just towards the end, you were bringing this neuroscientific perspective, right? So there's a lot of recent literature. I mean, I knew that from my postdoc days, but not much read after that, about the way new synapses form, the way we learn, unlearn, and all those aspects also. So maybe it may be just something interesting to discuss and have some more discussion in one of the future sessions. So how do we connect this learning that we know from more like this psychology or whatever, the education perspective, versus what all we know from this brain? You mentioned about this rat, that learning environment. So that actually impacts a lot.
Yeah, definitely. So
we know a lot from this.
So this recent education policies, or AAAS, what they have come up with. So there are a lot of new things that have come up in education because of all these studies. So maybe 30 years back, there wasn't so much of content in early childhood syllabus. But a lot of neuroscience and a lot of education psychologists and psychologists in general told that these studies told us that kids are able to learn much more than we think they are. So a lot of complicated concepts which were thought to be put out for higher studies was sort of brought down to early studies. So all these, what you're talking about, neuroscience and all these research continuously informs education. And earlier, like what the report says is, earlier, say 30-40 years back, education, people in education or curriculum used to work in isolation, and researchers used to work in isolation. But nowadays there is more and more of this interdisciplinary kind of thing, and there's continuous revision of what happens in education, and what is informed by research to education and so on. This is continuous feedback loop that is happening, and new things are coming out about understanding how learning happens.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah. Yes. Is teaching, is it right or not? I don't know. So basically, is there cognitive ability to learn? I don't know about nuclear physics, but is there cognitive ability to learn some complicated concepts? Basically, there is cognitive ability to learn complicated concepts. We have to decide how to use this cognitive ability. So I think people used it by putting in more content. We have to rethink that, I think. So yeah. Even in our discussion with teachers, sometimes, a lot of teachers, especially early childhood or primary teachers, say that, these are young kids, they won't be able to reason, they won't be able to do that. But a lot of research says that, young kids are able to reason well. They are able to do a lot of complicated things which we think they won't. It's just about putting the right things in practice. Yes, Aparijita.
Hi, Mrinal. So I've really enjoyed the session, and thank you so much for bringing so much back, and you were right that earlier the teachers and the educators were living in these isolated pockets.
Right.
But with the newfound ways of teaching and learning, plus the collaboration, wherein what we are doing is collaborating here, and the open-mindedness that brings on is making each educator a risk taker. And we are stepping out of our comfort zones and trying to adapt to the new ways of teaching and learning, which is very, very good. I think these collaborative spaces must be encouraged more and more, and not we I've been teaching for the past 27 years, so one would think that I have knowledge which is there from from long. But all my knowledge is retested all the time, every time that I step into a class and I'm interacting with a new age teacher or a younger person who has brought in some new experience to the table. So thank you very much for this wonderful experience. Really, really enjoyed it.
Thank you. Yeah, I think because of your experience, there will be a lot more that you could share. And yeah, discussion could be nice. Okay, so thank you for joining. As we said, this is not a place where there's one way sort of flow of information. This is a collaborative space where all of us can share our thoughts. And let's not stop it just here. Right now, the WhatsApp group we have limited to admin only, but we have a different WhatsApp group which we have created so that people who would enjoy discussion can be part of it. And we don't want to bombard people with a lot of WhatsApp messages. There could be people who just want to know the information about when the meeting is and so on. So just for organization's sake, we'll keep one WhatsApp group, the one that all of you are part of right now, just for sharing some logistics. And we'll share the link for the other WhatsApp group where all of us can keep sharing our experiences, some readings, I don't know, some thing that someone read and so on, so that this discussion will continue. If you have any other topics that you think we should discuss here, please write to us. If there are topics that you would like to lead the discussion, that would also be great. So do write to us in that case also. Thank you. Thanks a lot for joining. Yeah, and making it such a nice discussion.